Thank you for listening to my stories. And if you like them, please press the like and share and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Thank you. This story takes place back in 2010 of a group of friends that went fishing at New Hogan Lake up north close to Stockton. So it was summertime in that year, and my friends and I we like to go fishing, and we heard that the striper were biting good even from the bank. So we usually go in big groups, and this year was no different. So we got together, and a bunch of our friends and us, we picked a weekend, and we decided let's go over the weekend and bring a bunch of beers, food, music, and we headed out for the lake. And when we got there, we normally set up a tent and set up chairs, tables, play music, fish, just be normally loud. And we usually don't hang around close to other people so nobody would complain. But it was just the same thing as every year we always do. And we set up our rods, and this is during the evening, and it got late on to the night, and we had a fire pit going. Once nighttime came, and the fire pit was a little ways away from where we were fishing, so we don't scare the fish. And there was about 4 or 5 of us just sitting out there waiting, watching the rods. And that night, it was particularly dark, no moon, so we partied on and hanged out and just just being noisy, rowdy, drinking beers, not drunk, rowdy, but we were just hanging out. Then when around 11 p.m. came, we were all just doing our things. Then there's a hills or little hills across the lake, not too far, but they were far enough. And then then we all noticed that a light just appeared from the sky, and it was coming down. And when it came down, it came down right on top of the hills, right across where we were fishing, and it lit up the hill area that it was at. It just lit it up, so like a lantern, right? And we were all stunned. Then we just all quieted down, and we were just watching this light. Then the light, it started moving left. Then it decided, I guess it just split. It split up into like three or four extra, three extra lights, and the lights were moving opposite of each other, but at the same level. And they kind of danced around, and as they were dancing around, they lit up the whole hill. That wherever it was, these lights they lit up that area, and they were just dancing around for a little bit. I guess for like maybe 10 minutes. Then all of a sudden, the lights just slowly merged back into one, the original light. And when the light merged, it slowly went back up into the sky. And as it went up, I mean, we were all just watching. We were just silent at that point. We didn't know what it was, so we just watched it. And when it retreated back up, and then it disappeared, and then everything was dark again. Then we were like, "What did we just see?" But it was nothing. It didn't like nobody freaked out or anything, but we all agreed it was very very uh, spooky. And then for the rest of the night, we just stayed up and just talked. We were just talking about that the whole night, and that was the story. This story is a short story, and it connects to the first story, but I'll just tell it and add it to the first story. And it happened at the same lake with the same group of friends that we went, just on a different date. And as we were fishing that night, it was not a dark night. It was more, yeah, the moon was kind of out, but not completely dark. But as we were fishing, there's a bunch of other friends that were at the fireplace, fire pit, and four or five of us normally watching the fishing rods, just sitting there with the camping chairs, watching the rods. We had like little glow sticks attached to the tip, so we would see when the fish were biting. But that night, we were fishing, and it got to about 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was late, and we were just sitting there smoking, drinking beer, and just watching the rods. And we noticed that all of a sudden there was it got quiet, and there was a splash. And then right after the splash happened, then this thing that was the size of a school bus, black, jet black, just darker than the night, popped out right like at casting distance from us, right? So right when it popped up, it looked like a submarine, and we're like, "What is a submarine doing here?" Right? So my friends and I, we were just looking at this thing, and it didn't move or anything. It just popped up, and it was shiny, shiny black, like how a seal shine looks like, or a fish like a dolphin shine. It was shiny, and it just stayed there for like a good 20 seconds, right? So when we saw this, we just looked at each other and then kept looking at it. Nobody made a sound, right? So this thing, when it decided to, it just went back down, and it just resubmerged itself. And right when it resubmerged itself, all the rods that were right in front of us, not every single rod, but like maybe four or five rods, started bending forward, like they were getting bites, real bad bites. And then everybody grabbed and each person grabbed a rod, and we started yanking back. And as we were like yanking back and holding tension on the line, they just started snapping one by one. So after every single one of us that we got that were biting broke, the lines broke, we just reeled it in as quick as possible, and we reeled in the other rods that were out too, which is a couple more rods. We reeled them in. Then after we reeled it in, the water was back to calm, and then we just went back to join the guys at the fire pit, and they asked us, "Why aren't you guys fishing anymore?" We just gave them an excuse, saying that, "Oh, we're just gonna come hang out and not fish anymore for the rest of the night." Then we didn't tell them what happened either. We didn't say nothing. We didn't make a sound. We didn't scream. We didn't do anything, and we didn't tell them. So when we got home, or we were coming home, then we told them on the way home that, yeah, we saw that, and the guys, they're like, "Yeah, right. You guys are just BSing." But they didn't believe us, but it's okay because we saw what we saw, and yeah, that was it. This story is about my cousin Jim and his experience at his house. But before I start, I would like to give you a layout of his house, or their little apartment house. And the front, it's a dual house. I don't know what they call those, but there's a complete um, house up on top, and then the bottom there's also a house, and there's a ladder that goes, stairs that go up to the second story. But they happen to live on the bottom one, and it's a complete little house where I think there's a 3 bedroom in the bottom, and also 3 bedroom up top. They have kitchen, living room, everything just like the bottom up top. But anyway, their front door, when you open it, it leads into a little room in the front where you can put shoes and stuff. And then right when you walk into the middle room, that's where the living room's at. And you just keep walking, then the kitchen is next to that, but there's walls separating these rooms, and the back door is just straight. straight down that hallway, and if you would keep walking, you would not hit a wall. Then you would end up at the backyard. So that's so you'll understand the flow of the story a little better. Anyway, yeah. So 1 year, my uncle he came down to Fresno to go to the Hmong New Year, and he was staying with us. But at the time, I had a room, but the room was not it was not big enough for a couple people. So my brothers were staying with me too. They were living in there with me too. So we me and him we would sleep outside in the living room. And on this night, he stayed 2 nights with us. So the second night, we also slept in the living room, and we had pushed a couch against the wall, right in direct path of the walkway from the uh, front room straight to the kitchen. And my uncle was sleeping on that couch with his feet pointed towards the back door, and I was sleeping on the couch that was on the wall on this side, and my feet were pointing towards him. But anyways, during the middle of the night, it was dark, but there's light coming in the room from the street lamp, so it gave a little bit of you could see a little bit, and it's not complete darkness. So we were sleeping, and it was around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know exactly what time, but it was around that. Then I heard my uncle making noises, like he was having a bad dream, and he was just making noises. So I heard this, and then I heard like little kids giggling, and I couldn't understand. I was like, "Why are little kids giggling?" And my uncle was making some noises. I think he's having a bad dream. So I immediately sat up, and when I sat up, I looked towards my uncle, and right when I looked, I saw three little kids. They were just jumping like they're in a bounce house on top of my uncle, right? And at the same time, he was making noises like he was having a bad dream. And right when they saw me, they all looked at me right away, and they jumped off my uncle, and they made a beeline for the back door. So I got up right away, and I followed them, right, chased them, and then all I hear was the back door slamming shut. The back door, and then there's a fly door on the outside. I heard both of them shut. It's like slam, and then I ran after them, got outside, and we have a little light in the back, so you can see just around the door area and the stairs. And I didn't see anything. I looked left, right. I didn't go outside completely, but I went out like halfway out. I just looked around. I didn't see anything or where they went, so I just came back in the house, and I went to check on my uncle. I woke him up and asked him. He woke up groggy. He's like, "Wow, I just had a really bad dream." I go, "Yeah, you should have had a real bad dream," but I didn't tell him that what happened yet. And then the next day, the morning, we woke up, and during breakfast, then I kind of just pulled him aside and told him that, "Hey, what happened? I saw," and then that's why he was having a bad dream. I told him about it. He just kind of laughed it out, said that I was just probably seeing things, and I was just, scared. So, and I told my parents. They didn't say. They said that I was probably dreaming, but I know what I saw. But anyway, the story ends there. This next story is my sister's story, and it took place back in the early 2000s. So, back in the early 2000s, we were doing produce business, and we would deliver produce down south to LA, and we would do this about twice a week. And there's a lot of driving, and those who like to drive know that driving a lot means you get very sleepy. But on this particular night, we went, and me and my brother, we went to LA, and on the way there, we got probably halfway, and I was the only driver, so I was pretty tired, and there was the there was no rest area or store coming up soon, so I couldn't continue to the next rest area or store. So I decided to just pull over on the side of the road and take a nap. And so I pulled over and I was about to go to sleep. I just moved over to the passenger side, and these trucks that we have, they're not the big trucks, but they're box truck, but they're bigger than the average box truck. Well, anyway, I moved over to the passenger side and I got comfortable, and I put my foot up on the dash and covered myself with a blanket. And as I was dozing off, I just I felt I felt the presence, and I heard somebody or people outside the truck, and so I must have fell asleep. So when I dozed off, then in my sleepy state, I think I was dreaming. I saw three people move like around the front of my truck, and I could see them like I was awake. And when I saw them, they came around to the passenger side, and two of them came to the door, and they tried the door, and it was locked. So the third guy went back to the bed, and he was trying to pry open the back where the produce were. But these two guys right here, I could hear them talking, right? I just couldn't move. I was just paralyzed, and I couldn't move, but I was turned sort of like angled that way so I could see them. Well, I saw them when they come around. They came around the front of the truck, and I saw them. I could see them right there to the passenger side door, and they're trying to pry it open with the tool. And I heard them talking. They say, "Hurry up!" One guy told the other, "Hurry up before they wake up." And then the other guy's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to break. I'm trying to pop this lock right now. Give me a second or something." I heard them mumbling to each other, right? So I was like trying to move, and I couldn't move. I was stuck in this paralyzed state, but I could hear everything. And then when the guy was like, he almost got the door, that's when I was able to move. And when I moved, and then I was able to move, then I shot up right away. And I looked around, and I couldn't see anyone or anything. And there was nobody there. But right after that, I just sober, like woke up, and I wasn't sleepy anymore. So I jumped in the driver's side and started it up. And I didn't go outside to check. So I just drove and kept driving. And when we got to LA, then I stopped and checked my car, checked the door. I don't see any markings or anything. And I realized I was dreaming. But that was a real wild one. And that's not the only time. There's many other times. But I'll save that for another story. This next story was told to me by one of my good friends about the time when they went frog hunting. And for those of you that don't know, frog fishing or hunting is done usually at rivers or alongside water line, and the frogs would stay close to the shore, and usually done at night. And you shine a light, and you walk along the shoreline shining a light, and you'll see the frog's eyes reflect. So you use a long stick and you would whack the frog on the head. And then that's frog hunting. But anyway, the story goes, there was one day, my friends Tua and Lang, they called me up and they told me that it was the season for frog hunting. So we got together and we went up to Pine Flat, and there's a little river, a creek, more like a creek, and before you go up to Pine Flat, so the creek or river was low enough so you could walk along shore and hunt for frogs. So we got up there, it was darker, the evening, dark already, and so we got our stuff and went into the water, went down to the water, started hunting, and as we were walking along the shore and doing our thing, we got about 3/4 of a mile, and we were walking back towards the way that we came. So we were, hunting and going alongside, concentrating on looking for frogs as we kept going. And the water was like lower than knee high, so we were just walking, and three of us were walking alongside the shore, and we didn't pay any attention to our surroundings much. We're just focusing on what we are doing, and then when we got to about that 3/4 of a mile distance, then we started hearing like the first rock that was thrown at us. It landed like not too far from us, and it went splash, and we stopped, and then we looked around, shining lights around. We thought that it was other people, or someone threw a rock from the shoreline, that our side, but it was it was probably thrown from the other side of the shore, the other across the river, and it's not that far across. So we kept going, and probably like 10 feet away, and all of a sudden another one splash. So we stopped, and we were asking each other, do you guys see anything? So we look around, we don't see anything, and then now we're starting to get a little creeped out, a little spooked out, and so we we kept going. But my friends, two of my friends, they both brought sidearms with them. So one of them pulled out the sidearm, and he was just holding it. So he was kind of creeped out. So he was just holding it in case it was an animal, wild animal. But we kept going, and then another one, this time a little further out, but it sounded like a bigger rock was thrown straight to us, and it made a big splash right near to us. So right away we looked up and we shined our lights across the river, and there was this shadow figure just over like across the river next to the trees, and this thing darted straight back behind the tree, and we had our lights locked in that spot. So my friend that had the sidearm out, he decided to point it up in the air and shoot 3 times, and he took a couple shots 3 times, and then this thing was just, it stayed behind the tree. It didn't move. It didn't go anywhere. And then we just backed up and we went up the embankment and back up to the road. And then we just walked back to the car. And as we kind of speed walked to the car, got in the car, came back to that spot, and we just shine our lights around. We didn't see anything else or anything. The thing was gone. Then we just left and came home. And the story ends there.